Hello everybody, this is Tazitis and welcome back to another video. I just want to give a really quick disclaimer. This has offensive material in it. I'm giving you guys a trigger warning right here, right now. If you guys get easily triggered by offensive things like sexual assault or almost sexual assault and everything, please be warned that this chapter will contain it. I'll put a warning at the title and everything, but please know that there's a trigger warning at the beginning of this. There is offensive stuff in here, so if you guys don't like it, please skip this and just go on the next one. The picture above does not belong to me. I just want you guys to know that there are some controversial stuff in here, but if you guys get triggered by that, please know that that is in here. So let's get into it real quick. As Crystal stood there petrified. She had so many thoughts running through her head. So many thoughts. Like, how long had she been out? For hours, days, weeks, a couple minutes? Was she more safe in this room? Was this room safer than the other rooms were? If she went out of this room, would she be in danger? She should just wait here and hope that there was nothing. Should she just wait and hope that nothing in here would bad happen to her? Sorry, it's early in the morning. Would Zach be looking for her? Would he even know she was here? That she was missing it all? She stood there, her mind racing with horrible thoughts after horrible thoughts, wondering what to do. If she was to leave this room, where would she go? What would she do and say? If she would be caught by somebody. If she was to be caught by somebody. Crystal stood there for what felt like several hours, but it was probably just 30 to 40, very, very long 30 to 40 minutes, until she decided she could do more by going out than staying here waiting for something or someone to either come and get her or worse, find her and eat her. Crystal stood there trying to get her legs to work. It wasn't easy, but after a couple of wiggles and stumbles a bit, she started being able to walk around the room a bit. She thought it wasn't going to do her any good if she couldn't use her legs. She was able to walk without falling over, but the noises and yelling she kept hearing all the while still had her shaking. Then with a horrible thought and a knot in her gut, Crystal steeled herself and took a deep breath and then marched forward up the stairs a small thing. Turning the doorknob, she braced herself for what was to come. When Crystal opened the door, all the sounds from before were louder and unmuffled, so Crystal got the unfortunate presence of hearing every curse and every horrible insult you can and couldn't think of. Some others yelling in what seemed to be other languages, but she could tell from the tone of some of the tones they were also cursing. And some other voices were much calmer and seemed to either be answering the yelling voices, or trying to calm down the voices that were either yelling or cursing. That then mixed in between those was abominable grunting and growling and other noises that Crystal had never heard before. Ones that she did hear, she recognized from sounds in horror movies, and they were worse in real life. Crystal continued walking softly forward, feeling that now she was out of the room, she might as well keep walking out. As she exited the room to the basement, she saw it coming out in a dimly lit long hallway with off-white, yellowish, and slightly greenish peeling wallpaper, an old carpeted wooden floor, and there were several doors along the hallway, almost like a old hospital or nursing home. The hallway was curved outward. Down the hall is where the noises were coming from. Crystal tried to walk as softly as she could and slowly as she could as she continued forward, as the ranting and the noises continued. As the noises continued. She thought she... Down the hallway where the noises were almost ear-bleeding and bone-chilling. Crystal started to wonder whether she should go back to the basement already. Then she heard someone mention her. "Hey guys, what are we going to do with the Proxy Boys girl in the basement?" Some deep guttural male voice asked uncaringly. "Are we gonna just leave the little bitch in there?" Crystal froze, needing to know the answer was going to be. She also noted that she might not be the only one, given a lot of the yelling and sounds seemed to steal for a moment, as if to hear the answer or were thinking about her. She is still sleeping. She is still sleeping right now, but when she awakes, we'll just have to see. Until then, leave her be. A calm, steely voice answered her, but Crystal couldn't tell if it was male or female. "Oh, but do we get to have a good way of fun with the girl?" another voice asked, this one way too happy and cunning. We have rules, Zach. We have rules, Jack. No killing, mates or romantic partners of proxies, until otherwise proxies break the ranks or the girl blabs about us to the police, the voice replied. But just because you can't kill the girl doesn't mean you can't have some fun with her, as long as you show restraints. Crystal heard some happy comments and laughter at that. Crystal felt sick, then decided to turn around and head back to the basement as she slowly turned quietly around to quietly back down the hallway, down to the basement door. When she'd finally just fully turned around, she was just about to start walking forward, and when she did, she raised up her head to see Sally standing in the middle of the hallway in front of her, smiling. Crystal jumped back and stared. "Oh, hello, pretty lady. Pretty Crystal lady. What are you doing?" Sally asked, putting her hands behind her head, rocking back and forth on her heels. Crystal started to form a sentence and figured the truth was somewhat the way to go. "Oh, hi, Sally. I was just, I heard hollering and I just wanted to make sure everything was okay was all," she stumbled out. "Oh, that's good." Sally clapping her hands together, acting like they were good old friends playing spy on the adults and having fun together. "We were just waiting for you to wake up, and now that here you are, ready to play. Meet the rest of the family. Sally then walked right up to Crystal and then grabbed her hand and started trying to lead her back to where the noises were coming from, but Crystal pulled back. Sally, I'm not sure I'm ready to meet everyone yet." Crystal, trying to be polite as she can without being rude, and even though Crystal was scared to death of who or what Sally wanted her to meet. Sally stopped and then turned. Looking Crystal in the eye, she seemed to read the fear there, and she said, "Oh, you'll be okay, Miss Crystal. They won't hurt you. Nobody's gonna hurt you. They're not allowed to, remember? You just," she tugged on Crystal's hand reassuringly, "you just stick with me and you'll be okay," and then continued pulling her towards me. Crystal was shell-shocked as she was being pulled by this little girl, wondering if Sally remembered that she was also a monster who could kill her. But Sally didn't have much time to really Crystal didn't have much time to really think about that when Sally was pulling her, being led towards the corner and much smaller hallway down thing back where the sounds of bickering and yelling had just resumed. "They're in the kitchen area. They're getting a kitchen dining area," Sally told Crystal as she continued to guide her forward, and Crystal felt petrified and scared of what was going to do. What was she going to do or say or do? Then they came to the end of the hallway. As Sally pulled Crystal around the corner to the very, very large kitchen with a huge medieval-like oak wooden table running through the middle of the room, the kitchen itself was very old and ancient looking, very old, very big, almost as if it would fit to feed royalty, but not nearly as clean. Not saying that it was dirty, just everything in there had been used or worn down. But that's not what truly had Crystal's attention. No, what had her attention was the seemingly hundreds of strange non-humans and creatures that were all around the table in the room, that would argue and snarl and growling, but most all of them stopped to stare at her when she and Sally came in. Crystal stood there, looking at all the different monsters, serial killers, proxies, and was scared out of her mind, but remembered what Zach had told her about not letting proxies see you get freaked out by their looks, because it offended them. But that was the very last thing that was the very last thing that Crystal wanted to do, given she was in their territory. And they could probably smell her fear as it was. "Look who's awake!" Sally chipped happily, holding out her hand, and then Sally pulled Crystal towards the table, and Crystal was yanked forward and yanked out of her frozen state. Not out of her fear, though. In fact, her fear had spiked back up when she saw she was pulling towards a man sitting on the table closest to them. "She heard the yelling and was worried. I told her it was okay, but she was safe," she told the man. She told him as though Crystal was a little child, and Sally was the one looking after her. "Miss Crystal, this is Dr. Locklear. She introduced him, Crystal holding hand and then waving to the doctor and the other. "He's a good doctor and a gentleman." Sally continued. "Only sometimes, dearie," he said with a warm smile on his face, and Crystal, this was the deep, calm voice that had been talking earlier. The man sat down with the cup of what looked like tea he was drinking. He turned in his chair to fully face the both girls, before standing up to greet them properly. "It's good to see you in good health, Miss Crystal." He then took one of her other hands in in his own hands and looked her full on. "We're sorry about your unfortunate forced visit," he said, honestly and a bit sheepishly. "We kinda knew that Zack wasn't keen on to bring you here himself, and that you were hesitant to go against your boyfriend's request. So Sally thought it would be a good to take matters into her own little hands." "Hey, they're not that little. They're not that little," she told him, still holding Crystal's hand, sticking her tongue out at him quickly. "Of course not." Dr. Locklear lightly chilled her, then patted Crystal's hand reassuringly, giving her a smile. Now Crystal was a little bit more out of her shock, and she could get a better look at him. He was a deeply tanned man, well built, and had long, puffy black hair pulled in a messy ponytail. His face was soft and angular, almost like a hawk. But what caught Crystal by surprise was his eyes. They were sparkling light blue and very pretty. He also wasn't dressed like any doctor she had seen. He was wearing boots, a dark black pants, and a long brown leather overcoat with the plague doctor mask at his side. Thank you, sir. I guess, sir." Crystal's voice merely steadily than she would have thought it came out. Uh, he smiled warmly at her and then let go of her hands and then back down to his chair, still looking at her and Sally. Before Crystal could say anything else, Sally began dragging her to somewhere further down the table to meet someone else. "And this is Clockwork. Clockwork, this is Crystal, Zach's girl." Clockwork had turned her chair to face them both. She was young. She was a young woman with brown, dirty hair and a pale complexion. But what had Crystal's heart pumping was the fact that one of her eyes was replaced by a clock. But aside from that, she looked almost normal. Aside from the uptight, crazy energy she seemed to pulse out. A low-cut blouse and a jacket with fur rimmed. A long, tight-fitting pants and a thick, skull-crushing boots. "What a shame. If you weren't Zach, I might have you," Clockwork said, shocking Crystal. Crystal stood there not knowing what to say at all, or if she should. But Clockwork answered her anyway. It's okay. My name is Natalie, and welcome to the family, such as it is." She shook out her hand for Crystal to shake. Crystal managed to shake herself and then reach out to shake Natalie's hand. Crystal, pleased to meet you." Natalie smiled warmly at Crystal supposed. "Oh, I'd be careful the next time you go to shake someone's hand. There are people here who've got poison running through their veins, so you might die. Just a little FYI, chica." Crystal jerked her hand back in fear, shakily taking steps back in fright. Natalie just continued to smile at Crystal. "Just a friendly warning, dear," her smile going creepily. Crystal, still stunned, managed to nod wearily at her before she could say or do anything else. Sally was dragging her off to meet another person, then another person, and another and another. Crystal was introduced to so many different creatures and people, even a couple of proxies, but this time Crystal tried not to shake anyone's hand. Her panic had not lessened, but it had become so distracted by meeting so many people and things that she was so caught up with being polite that her fear kind of took a back seat. Sad thing was, Crystal could barely remember anyone's name. She met some very interesting creatures. When she met a weird-looking thing that was somebody's pet. Then she met a monochromatic black and white clown, and she even met one or two kids that kind of looked like Sally. And then she met even some others that are proxies like Toby. Masky, Hoodie, Tony? No, Tiki Toby. She had been around the room and back again, and she could barely recognize or remember half the people she had met. Sally was still near, but was no longer holding her hand. Crystal was surprised, just casually and chatting with some of them, with some of the family members, the teenager ones, when she felt something slide up her leg, a tentacle, followed by a faint presence behind her. Before Crystal knew it, there was a large hand on her upper part of her shoulders, coming from behind, and an oily voice in her saying, "Who is this delicious creature?" Crystal froze in shock when she turned and looked over her shoulder, come face to face with a white face, with joints, but a fake mouth, and smiling at her with a full set of teeth. I think I have to stop it here, you guys, but from this point on, this is where the warning would come in at, because this is sexual phenomenon. So, I'll see you guys in the next one.